What is going on, Mountaineer Nation? This is Couz,
And my name's Mountaineer Paul.
and we present to you.
Hoops from the hills.
Let's roll, baby. Mountaineer Paul and I are excited to bring you this brand new channel, Hoops from the Hills, where we're going to talk Mountaineer basketball and Big 12 basketball. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about the West Virginia Mountaineers 2022 season. We're going to preview the season. We're going to take a look at the schedule, give you our record predictions, and we're going to talk a little bit about the rosters and what we're looking forward to most in this season. So let's dig right into the content, Paul. First and foremost, just give me your initial thoughts on this season.
Really excited, man. I think we're going to be a better basketball team. I know we're going to do record predictions later, but just generally, I think we're going to be a better basketball team. Huggins has got some of his guys in. To hear him talk, it's going to take a little while to whip these dudes into shape as far as the kind of basketball he wants them to play. But they come from backgrounds that are similar to what he wants. So it's going to be easier than last year when I think he was working with guys that didn't really care for his brand of coaching and they weren't his kind of players.
Right. I agree. And, I am really excited to see how these new guys gel together. I think they're going to play more hug-style basketball. They're going to play hard-nosed, tough, aggressive defense. They're going to rebound the basketball. I think they're going to struggle to score a little bit because that's kind of what he's been saying the first two scrimmages. And let's just be straight up honest. Hugs teams don't usually score the ball real well. They have to rely on their defense and their rebounding to score the ball. But
Correct.
But I think this team's going to be exciting to watch. I really like the pieces that he's brought in. It's just going to, like you said, it's going to take them a while to gel together and work together because they're basically all new to the program. He's only got, I think I read somewhere that just over 2% of our production coming back from last season. So a lot of new faces that have to gel together. But I do like the individual pieces that he's brought in. Let's look at the schedule real quick. We're just going to kind of go. We're not going to do a game by game breakdown here. We're just going to look at the schedule, look at the out of conference portion. We'll give our record predictions for the out of conference portion. Then we'll show you the conference schedule, obviously, and then give our predictions there, and then our overall record predictions for the season.
Yeah. And Couz, when you look at this schedule, according to multiple outlets, it's the top 3, top 4 strength of schedule in the country. The Mountaineers really play a tough schedule this year, the equivalent of an SEC schedule in football.
Yeah. I actually saw one outlet that had it as the hardest schedule in the country.
Oh, yeah, I believe it is. And the players do as well. Erik Stevenson said it twice that I can think of.
Yeah. All right, first game, obviously, we're recording this video on November 7th tonight, first game of the season in the Coliseum against Mount St. Mary's. Then on Friday the 11th, they travel up the road to Pitt to take on the Pitt Panthers, a game I'm actually planning to attend. But it'll be my first time in the Peterson Event Center to watch a backyard brawl. I'm really excited about it. Hopefully I don't get in a fight. Then they play Morehead State at home on the 15th. They play the University of Penn, an Ivy League school, at home on the 18th. Then they travel to Portland to play in the Phil Knight Legacy Tournament, and there is some good teams in this tournament. Look at these teams, man. Purdue, Gonzaga, Portland State,
Duke, Florida, Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, what a schedule there.
It's possible we're the worst team there. Going into that.
Yeah, on paper, possibly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Maybe with the exception of Portland State, who sometimes Portland State can surprise you though.
But I didn't see Portland State. Apologies about that.
No, that's all right. No worries. But yeah, Gonzaga, Portland State, Duke, Florida, Oregon State, Xavier, and then they turn around. They could potentially have to play Xavier twice in a row because then they have to play Xavier in the Big East Big 12 battle. Then they come back home to play Navy on the 7th. Then they play UAB at home on the 10th. They play Buffalo at home on the 18th, Stony Brook on the 22nd, and then they'll get into their conference schedule. But when you look at these 13 out-of-conference games, including the tournament, Paul, Where do you have them landing record-wise on their out-of-conference schedule?
I'll tell you what, Couz, it's going to be tough, man. I see 7 wins.
Okay.
So I think they're going to go 7-6 out of conference because I think this team's going to be better towards the end of the year, and they're going to go on somewhat of a run. Uh, the out of conference is just so tough, and Jose Perez doesn't arrive till January.
Right.
I think he's going to be probably our second most primary scoring option once the dust all settles. I think he'll be the second primary scoring option on this team, which is just my prediction. And I think this by the time that he gets acclimated with the team, this team's going to be scoring the ball a lot better. They're going to have more options, and I think this team's going to be a lot better after the non-conference portion of the schedule.
Right. I agree with you. Now let's get into the conference schedule. They open, as always, they usually open with 2 straight away games. Hugs always requests that because they're still on Christmas break. He wants to do 2 away games on the road back to back so that they don't have to miss class. Plus, it reduces their travel by not having to fly. They don't have to fly out west or to the Midwest, fly back to Morgantown, and then back out Midwest again. They'll fly to Kansas State. They'll fly to Manhattan, play Kansas State. Then they'll travel from Kansas State down to Stillwater to play the Oklahoma State Cowboys on January 2nd. So it's a Saturday, Monday road trip for the Mountaineers. Then they'll return home to face Kansas on January 7th in Morgantown. That should be an exciting game. It's always exciting when you have the Jayhawks coming to town. Then they turn right around and play Baylor. So they have to play the last two national champions back to back at home on the 7th and the 11th. And by the way, that's January 11th is when Jalen Bridges will be returning to Morgantown.
Big storyline.
It is. Oklahoma. We go to Oklahoma on the 14th. Back home against TCU on the 18th of January. Texas at home on the 21st of January. At Texas Tech in Lubbock on the 25th of January. Then they take a break from conference play to play Auburn at home in the Big 12 SEC Challenge on January 28th. And Auburn is Auburn's
Bruce Pearl.
Yes, Bruce Pearl's got that team rolling, man, and their basketball team. Auburn's becoming a basketball school, folks. Believe it or not. Then you've got Then they get back into conference play at TCU on January 31st.
And that's Jamie Dixon.
It is. And,
Yep.
And he's got that team rolling. As a matter of fact, I think they're preseason top 15, if I'm not mistaken.
They are. Yeah. He's finally got some of what those old Pitt teams looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Those real physical. He's a very similar coach to Hugs.
He is. Jamie Dixon is an excellent basketball coach, man. So he's going to have his team competing this year. Then they play Oklahoma at home on the February 4th, Iowa State at home on February the 8th. Then they go to Austin to face the Longhorns on February the 11th. February 13th, they're at Baylor. The Red Raiders come into Morgantown on February the 18th. And then the Oklahoma State Cowboys are in Morgantown on the 20th. They go to Kansas on February 25th. To Iowa State on the 27th, and then they finish the regular season against the Kansas State Wildcats at home on March 4th. So I'm assuming that will be senior day for the Mountaineers. And then they play the Big 12 championship, obviously that following week, beginning on March 8th. March 8th through 11th in Kansas City. By the way, that's on my bucket list. I would love to attend that sometime. That would be fun.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
I've heard Kansas City's a great city.
Yeah. It's a great sports town.
So, what do you have them finishing in the conference portion of their schedule?
I think they're going to win 12 out of those 18 games in the conference portion of the schedule. I think the team's going to improve over the course of the season. Like I said, Jose Perez comes in January. By the time March comes around, this team is clicking on all cylinders, barring injury. Trey Mitchell will also have been acclimated by then. And I just think if you think about it from a numbers perspective, you think of a guy like Erik Stevenson, who averaged 11 points a game last year. If you look at Trey Mitchell when he actually had the ball, like Texas last year, he was not a featured part of their offense at all. He only played in 7 games or so. By the time they were midway into the season, he wasn't even being featured. So I feel like he's going to revert back to that former Trey Mitchell when he averaged 18 points a game.
Right.
I feel like Emmitt Matthews averaged 11 points a game. There's a lot of guys that can score the ball on this team, and then you throw in a Jose Perez that was the preseason MAAC Player of the Year and also averaged 18 points a game. There's a few guys on this team that can score the ball. And if that turns out to be the case and nobody's injured, man, you want to talk about a team that could possibly play really good offense and defense. And I think this could be a really sneaky team. We're talking about a team that might have only 19 or 20 wins come that time, but they're going to be a lot better than that record says.
That's a great point. I've got, and I'm similar. I have them with a few more out of conference wins than you do, but when I have them going in, which I actually forgot to give my prediction on their out of conference. I got them going 9-4 out of conference, a little bit better than you did. But I think when they start conference play, they're going to start out struggling. I think they'll drop a few games early in conference play. Then I think they pick it up halfway through the season. Like you said, as the team starts to gel together, as they get some of these injured players back, as they get some new faces, the Perez kid, as he comes in, they start to all gel together. And I think by the end of the conference play, they're rolling. And I think they end the season, I think they win 11 conference games, 9 out of conference games for an overall record of 20-11. That will be enough to get him into the NCAA tournament. Obviously, that doesn't count the Big 12 tournament, but that's just regular season. But I think they finished 20-11 in the regular season. And I think that'll, obviously whatever they do in the Big 12 tournament, it probably won't matter at that point. I think 20 will be enough to get them in with the strength of schedule they're facing.
Absolutely. 18 games might be enough with the strength of schedule they're facing. Agreed. They've done it for people before.
Agreed.
As long as and since we can remember, there's always the Kansas upset or a Baylor win that they're not supposed to have. We're going to play top 5 teams in this conference.
Yep.
And under Bob Huggins, West Virginia's done a really nice job of beating and knocking off high-profile teams that are on runs, especially in Morgantown. So he'll probably have a few of those on the resume to look good come turning time.
I agree. And I'm really excited about seeing this team and what they can do once they gel together. And I think they're going to be fun to watch again. I really do. I think you're going to see guys diving on the floor for loose balls. I think you're going to see guys, playing just hard-nosed, scrappy defense. I think we'll see some pressing. I don't think we'll see full-blown press Virginia, but I do think we'll see some full-court pressure defense, just really fast-paced play, especially on the defensive end. And I can't wait to see that, man. I'm looking forward to it. Matter of fact, as we talk, I'm getting excited. But, real quick, I want to look at the roster of this team as well. Not necessarily want to share the roster, but we can just talk about it. But we've got Jimmy Bell, JUCO transfer that came in to play underneath the basket. The kid has lost 75 pounds since he's been on campus in the summer.
Yeah.
Just a great story. He came in weighing about 360. Now he weighs 285. Then you've got Josiah Davis, 6'3" freshman out of Ontario, Canada, with the Tays Valley Christian School in West Virginia. You've got Josiah Harris, a 6'7" freshman out of Canton, Ohio, who they said has looked fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be a big contributor for us. Kedrian Johnson's back. He's one of the few returning. He's the only returning senior on the team. You got Kobe Johnson, a sophomore from last year's squad. Jamel King from last year's squad. Emmitt Matthews is back. We're all excited about him. Trey Mitchell, that we mentioned, the transfer out of Texas. James Okonkwo, who has looked fantastic, they said, in the offseason. Kid can just jump out of the gym. He's a sophomore, going to be a really big contributor under the basket, can rebound, block shots, do everything. Erik Stevenson, the transfer from South Carolina, he's a senior. Patrick Sumanik, who's dealing with injury, but he's a sophomore.
I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about him, to be honest with you. But he's out of Triton College. So he's a JUCO transfer. Then you've got Joe Toussaint, the transfer from Iowa, who's just an absolute defensive machine. And what's crazy is Kedrian Johnson might be an even better defender than he is. So you get those two guys on the floor together, man, you're going to see some steals.
Yeah. You want to talk about the front end of the press and a nice backcourt, and obviously they're probably not going to be. I mean, maybe they'll be on the court at the same time. I don't know the plan, but they're perfect replacements for one another.
Yeah,
yeah.
Hugs would love to play them together because he did some in the scrimmages, and it worked really well. But the problem is that's our 2 point guards, and he can't afford to get them both in foul trouble potentially. So he needs to make sure he's got one available at all times. Now, once they add Jose Perez to the mix, because he's a guard as well, I don't know if he's a point guard per se, but once they get another guard there, maybe they'll be able to do more of that. I don't know.
Perez has played point guard, but in the Big 12, it's a whole different animal.
Absolutely. Then you've got Muhammad Wagi, I think that's how they pronounce his name, the sophomore transfer out of Harcum College.
Mm-hmm.
They say he's probably not going to score the ball a whole lot, but he's a great rebounder and a good defender underneath. Looked really good in the scrimmage, they said. And then Seth Wilson's back from last year's team, a guy that can knock down some shots for you out of Lorain, Ohio.
Need him to really have a big year.
We do. And one side note that I don't know how many Mountaineer fans know this. Anybody who follows the program closely probably does, but we have a new coach on the staff this year, Mr. Alex Ruoff. Mountaineer fans ought to remember Alex Ruoff. He's a grad assistant this year on Coach Huggins' staff. He finally retired from playing overseas and decided to get into coaching, and Hugs gave him a spot on his staff. So it'll be exciting to see Ruoff on the sidelines this year beside Hugs. I think that's pretty neat.
He was with Beeline, recruited by John Beeline. But did he play with Hugs as well? Did he transfer over?
He was here when Huggins is during the transition. Yes,
I thought so.
Yep.
Yeah, I loved Alex Ruoff. He was such a great shooter too.
Oh,
I loved watching him play. Just those classic Beeline teams, those kind of players that he had. Those just where there's a Mike Gansey or him. I loved some of those squads.
So yeah, and Paul, you can correct me, or somebody else watching can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here, but I think he's the all-time three-point leader in West Virginia history as far as three-pointers made. Is that accurate? I think that's accurate.
That's a good question.
I'm pretty sure he is. If not, I know he's in the top 2 or 3 anyway.
But I know he was really dang good.
Yeah, he's one of the top three-point shooters in the history of the program for sure. But anyway, so we got a lot of new faces. We got some JUCO transfers mixed in with some grad transfers, mixed in with some returning sophomores. We got only one returning senior, like I said, that's Kedrian Johnson, who's going to probably be the starting point guard. So it's going to be interesting to watch. It's different than what we're used to. We're used to seeing the same guys suiting up that we saw last year. It's not the case. You're going to see a lot of new guys. I mean, Emmitt obviously is familiar with to us. Him and Kitty's really the only two that we saw a lot on this Mountaineer team, because even the sophomores that are back, some of those guys didn't play a whole lot last year, and they're going to be expected to step up and do and contribute more this year. Who was the one player, Paul, that you are most excited about watching this season?
It's a tough question. It's between Trey Mitchell and Erik Stevenson. Frank Martin, unfortunately, was let go at South Carolina, and Erik Stevenson was a Frank Martin guy, who by extension is a Bob Huggins guy. And there's a reason he came to West Virginia. He chose to be here because he wanted to play for a guy like Frank Martin and Bob Huggins. Where really Frank Martin's more like Bob Huggins because he's a protege of Bob Huggins.
Right.
And so he's also known as a great defender, but he can score it. And he's actually, in my opinion, a great replacement, for some of the guys that we left. And he actually plays more defense than they did. Mm-hmm. That was a problem last year. But Trey Mitchell has so much unlimited potential. He's got lottery pick potential. That's how good he could be.
Absolutely.
He can shoot it from the outside, from the high clip. He might be the best 3-point shooter on our team. That's how good he can shoot it at times. But he's also got an inside presence. If you go back, I encourage you, Mountaineer fans, don't look at his Texas statistics. Go back another year and look at his UMass statistics when he was the focal point of the offense, when he almost averaged 20 points a game. He can fill it up. And I'll be interested to see if he can return to some semblance of that this year, because we've got some guys that can knock down shots, whether that be in Seth Wilson, a Kedrian Johnson, even Keedy can knock down shots from time to time. Erik Stevenson, Emmitt Matthews can all knock down shots from time to time. If we just have somebody that gets hot each game, or maybe two guys, and those three guys in the middle, whether it's Waggy, Jimmy Bell Jr., or Trey Mitchell. I'm sorry, I went on a tangent. I'm excited about all these guys.
That's fine. No worries, man. I love your enthusiasm. And I guess if I had to pick one player, there's more than one for me too. But if I had to pick just one, I'm excited to see Emmitt Matthews again, man, because I want to see the evolution he's made in his game since he left. Because word is he's worked on his shooting a lot when he was at Washington. Mm-hmm. He spent that 1 year in Washington and worked on his shooting a lot. And they said he's a much better shooter now. He said he's fixed his form.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to see him now be able to step outside and make threes on a more consistent basis. I really liked him at Matthews. I loved he always played hard. I loved his playing style. He's and hearing his story about him coming back and how he basically missed it when he was gone, and envisioned his senior day at Washington. He imagined he was on the court in the Coliseum. It's just a cool story.
Wow.
Him and Huggins stayed in touch while he was gone, and he said it was a no-brainer to come back. And what makes it even cooler is he and Erik Stevenson are personal friends. They played the AAU circuit together out in Washington. So, those two already have a bond, so that you're probably going to see some pretty exciting things with those two guys on the court together because of that chemistry they already have. So I'm just really excited to see Emmitt Matthews back in the Mountaineer Gold and Blue again. Just because of that story and the fact that he wanted to come back home, and just see how his game's improved, because I do think he's going to be a much more improved and much more consistent player for us this year than he was a year ago, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago, I guess, when he was here before.
I agree.
This about wraps us up, guys. Paul, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, just a couple more little tidbits real quick. If you dive into a couple of the rebounding totals for Waggy and Jimmy Bell, I know I'd mentioned this earlier, but just going to read it off here. So he led the nation in offensive and total rebounds with 417 and 170 offensive rebounds. And Jimmy Bell was third in offensive rebounds and 11th in total rebounds. That gives me a lot of hope, because we did not have that last year. And I can just see Hugs saying to them, inside and opposite, preaching that technique. He loves it. It's probably one of the 2 to 3 most important statistics for a Hugs coach team, because as Hugs tells people, rebounding is a part of defense. So I think that's going to be a really, really big thing for us this year.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree with you, man. And it's going to be nice. It's going to be last year. This team got out rebounded, and that drives Hugs crazy.
Yeah.
So, and Hugs made a comment at one of his press conferences that last year's team was soft, with the exception of Gabe and obviously Keedy. I don't think he was referring to Keedy. I think he was referring to the guys that are not there now. And then I heard Joe Toussaint make a comment when he watched last year's team play on film. There was some lack of effort that he saw on film. So,
yeah,
I mean, being soft and having no effort is not Bob Huggins basketball. I mean, we all know that. So it's going to be good to see these guys get back to Huggy ball, as I like to call it.
Yeah, they started out so hot too last year, and then fell off completely.
Oh yeah, it was nuts how they. But it just goes to show you though how good the Big 12 is. I mean, the Big 12 is just a brutal conference. And you've got to be when you start Big 12 conference play, you better be clicking, or you're going to get beat. Real quick, Paul, let everybody know we're focusing on basketball here, but Paul also has another channel. Tell everybody else what your other channel is.
Yeah, it's Mountaineer Paul Talks Football. We cover the Big 12, also West Virginia Mountaineers football. if something big breaks, we'll tackle that too. But definitely, it's got a heavy dose of Mountaineers, and that's the way we like it. We love the Mountaineers. We love the Mountaineer fans. We love you guys.
Absolutely. And then me, my other channel is Couz's Corner. I also do West Virginia and Big 12 football, national football storylines that break. I do a lot on conference realignment news, things like that. So check out our other channels. We can leave links to those other channels too in the description of this video if you want to check us out there. But we look forward to giving you guys even more basketball content here on this brand new channel we just started. Paul and I are excited about this. Kind of, I don't want to say it's outside of our comfort zone, but we're just kind of trying new things, branching out a little bit, thinking outside the box, and we're gonna see how this goes, man. We hope you guys come along for the ride as we talk Mountaineer and Big 12 basketball throughout this 2022 season and hopefully beyond that. So with that being said, guys, Paul and Couz, we're out.